What's up, guys? Welcome to Ute Dash. It's been some time since we've been with y'all, but we have a great show lined up for you guys today. A lot to talk about. As always, I'm joined by Sammy Mora. And Sammy, let's just jump right into it. Give us the update on the wonderful Red Rocks program that did something pretty special last night.
Outright Pac-12 champions. Woo, 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 woo. That's a huge accomplishment for this team. This is the second year that the regular season title has been in play. They won it last year because they were undefeated, but then COVID hit and they weren't able to compete in the Pac-12 Championship, so they didn't get a championship meet. But I am pretty sure they could have been outright champions last year as well. But anyways, last night, I was nervous. I was nervous to start. Abby Polson fell off her bars routine. Literally the first routine of the night for Utah. Her hand slipped from her transition from her low bar to her high bar, and
You lost it a little bit.
I did. You have the text to see that of me just screaming about how hard it was, like how stressed I was. But, I shouldn't have doubted, because the back half of this Utah lineup of a bars lineup of Emily LeBlanc, Miley O'Keefe, and Crystal Issa all came in clutch. Emily with a 9.875, and then Crystal and Miley with a pair of 9.95s. So it was huge. Huge for that back half of that lineup to just kind of rebound from Abby's mistake. But that momentum that they got for those last two routines on bars really carried over into floor and beam. Beam was our next event, and of course, if you follow Utah Gymnastics, you know that the beam is our best event. We're number 3 in the country on the event. I don't know what I was expecting, but that was so much better. They put a master class on both the floor and the beam. So good. And I think on floor, the lowest score Utah recorded was a 9.9, which is insane, which means that we had to throw out a 9.9 to make sure that we could count all of our 9.95s and 9.925s that we got. Beam, I love watching this team on beam. They're elegant, they're magnificent, and they're utterly perfect. I want to give a special shout out to Adrienne Randall on beam, who had by far her best beam routine of her career at Utah. It was magnificent. Her twisting swing down, best I've ever seen her do it. But then, thank God we built up a lead on beam and floor, because vault kind of scared me once again. Vault is not one of our best events, but the lead we had was enough to push us through. But also, Tom Farden called an audible literally midway through the rotation. He pulled Cammie Hall out of the lineup from the anchor and put freshman Alani Sabato in that position. And that's a lot of pressure to put a freshman in, being the anchor, the last one to go, and the team is riding on that score to see if they actually can hold out and win. We were blessed a little bit, because UCLA and Cal, who are hot on our heels, both suffered falls on beam and floor, so it kind of gave us a little bit more leeway. But for Alani to go out there and score that 9.8 to solidify that victory, huge for this team. Tom didn't say why he pulled Cammie out, but when I was watching 2-minute touch warm-ups prior to vault starting, Cammie looked like she kind of got shaken up on her warm-up, and it kind of looked like she was a little stiff. So he made a good call on that one. Alani looked perfect. That was her first scored vault as a Red Rock. She's exhibition on the event numerous times this season, but for her to go out there on her first scored event and score 9.8 when the team desperately needed it, ice in the veins. There is still a lot of things that this team needs to clean up before regionals on the 3rd of April. First is landings on both vault and bars. The rest of the routines were pretty good. It was just deductions on step landings, hops. Just they're leaving tenths on the floor when they're going to need it. And then on bars also, their handstands. To get full credit for a handstand, you have to be within 10 degrees of being perfectly vertical. But sometimes judges are if you're not perfectly vertical, they're not going to give you the points. So that's something else they can work on, and I have faith in Tom to get that kind of snapped out. Abby's fall, I think, kind of shook the team, and that was so uncharacteristic of her to fall.
Yeah.
So we'll see where it is. But if they can figure out their stuff on vault and bars, they're going to be unstoppable heading into regionals, which We'll find out where they compete. Well, we know they're gonna compete in Salt Lake because there's a Salt Lake regional this year. It'll be at the Maverick Center. Fans will be able to attend. Tickets will go on sale after regionals are announced, basically. But tomorrow we will find out who is going to be in each of the regional sites. So Utah's already locked in their spot at the Salt Lake City regional. So we're just going to find out who we're going up against and what session, because there's going to be 2. But this team is the most talented team in the Pac-12.
Mm-hmm.
And I've said it once and I'll say it until like the end of the season. Cal had 2 really good meets, 2 really high scoring meets that kind of pushed Utah. And last night, Utah was able to run with the big dogs. Like, they are a big dog, but, Cal is really on the upswing, with their coaches being named Pac-12 Coach of the Year. That shows that everyone's taking notice of Cal.
Right.
And UCLA, UCLA used to be one of those teams that I was drastically afraid of every single year when we went up against them. But this year, it just ain't it. It just ain't it for them, There's just a lot of things that I don't know if it's because of COVID or if it's because of personnel or what it is or coaching. This UCLA team, I think, is going to be one of the Pac-12 teams that doesn't make it to nationals. I think Cal and Utah have a very, very good chance of making nationals, and I think they will. But I don't think, depending on whatever card UCLA draws for regionals, I don't think they're getting past regionals.
Okay, so a few questions. For our viewers, along with myself, can you help us understand how big of a deal it is to be undisputed champions?
It's big, but it doesn't hold the same ramifications as if it was like the tournament, like the men's basketball tournament. Them being undisputed being the Pac-12 champions doesn't mean they automatically get a spot in like the tournament or in regionals and stuff. It's based on ranking still, and it's really good to just. It's just really cool. I love it. I love that we're undisputed because it proves that like you're the best team in the conference. Because the Pac-12 is one of the hardest conferences when it comes to gymnastics.
Right.
It's like the SEC and the Pac-12 have some of the most decorated teams in all of college gymnastics. So to say that you can go up against them and come out as the top dog, that's huge. And it's a huge recruiting tactic too. Tom Farden even said last night that Utah's a juggernaut and that we're finally like seeing that. And I was like, I've always seen that, but now it's like we have 2 trophies to back that up.
For sure. Yeah, definitely helps. And then the next question would be how good are Utah's chances to not only potentially win regionals, but then go on and really give nationals a shot?
Depending on depending on who else is in our like regional location, I think the chances are really good. So you have to be out of the 4 regional locations, there's 2 sessions on each, like at each regional. The top 2 teams advance to nationals from each session. So as long as Utah finishes in the top 2 of their session, they're going to go to nationals, which is like I can see that happening. Like one projection has Utah, LSU, Arizona State, and Kentucky in there, and we beat Arizona State twice this year. Kentucky, I think we can beat, and LSU looked not great last night in the SEC championship. They didn't win, and they're number 2 or 3 in the country. Another projection I saw had Utah, Arizona State, Utah State, and Southern Utah. That would be the easiest draw for Utah because you've beat Utah State twice, Arizona State twice, and SUU once.
It's like a warm-up meet for them, preseason warm-up.
It is. And they're not going to let it get to their head because they're finally in that postseason mode and they're finally hitting their stride right now. And I was talking to Michelle Bodkin last night, who works at Ute Zone at the meet, and she brought up a good point. Something that I hadn't really thought of is that Utah is probably the most consistent team we've seen all year in gymnastics. Every single week, with the exception of the Utah State meet last weekend, Utah's scores have progressively gotten better and have gone up. And when you look at teams like Oklahoma, who had 4 girls fall off the beam in one routine in 1 week, and then struggle vastly the next week, and then you have Florida, who was basically a shoo-in for the SEC championship and lost last night. You take into account these kind of things and you see it, and this team is healthy, they're determined, and they're ready to go. And so if we can see the Utah team that we saw last night with with beam and floor, if we could see the vault team we had versus Oregon State, and if we could just have one of our best bars rotations of the season, I think Utah's chances of winning the national championship are pretty good. I'm not going to say like 100%, but I think they're going to finish in the top 2 this year because I think they have the skills and they have the talent and they have the girls to do it.
Well, I mean, that's obviously really encouraging, and it'll be interesting to see how they perform moving forward. And no doubt, we'll definitely hear about it hopefully next week with what's going on with regionals and then moving forward nationals. So good luck to the Red Rocks moving forward. But let's go ahead and transition. I know you can talk about gymnastics all day, but we don't have all day. But let's transition to our second topic. Another big thing that happened, another victory for the Utes this last week. Head coach Larry Krystowiak relieved of his duties after 10 seasons with the program. Sammy, I'll let you take a jab at this first because then I need to talk all day about this.
You know, am I surprised? Kind of. I'll say kind of, because here's the thing. We all wanted a coaching change, but we didn't know if it was going to happen this year because of COVID and because of the financial ramifications that Larry Krystowiak's contract held. You know, $7.6 million, $5 or $6 million was his buyout. That's a lot of money when you're already in a deficit because you couldn't have fans at your sporting events because of COVID. I'm excited to see where the program goes. You know, Larry and his wife are great people. They did a lot for the University of Utah and they did a lot for the city of Salt Lake. But, you know, it's time to move on. It's time for Utah to get up and go back to I don't want to say the Majerus days because those were kind of off the court. Those were kind of risky, but on the court winning style of like the Majerus era, I think is what Utah needs to be at. Like, look at the Pac-12 right now in the tournament. Undefeated. Like, if we could get Utah to that level, it's going to be great. And Utah fans have been wanting this for a while. And, you know, this job's attractive. Despite what other people say online, whatever other people say online, you know, this is attractive. You have tons of talent. You have fantastic facilities. You have a passionate fan base who wants to see this team win and wants to see this team thrive. And I think if they get the right person in there, this team is going to be back to contending for Pac-12 championships, back in the tournament, you know, just making Utah basketball enjoyable again. And I think is a big thing. There's a lot of names flying around right now, like, you know, Craig Smith, Alec Jensen, even BYU's Mark Pope. You know, we're going to see how this goes, but I think with this being Harlan's first big hire, I think it's going to be crucial. I don't know the word I'm looking for, but it's going to be really important to see who he brings in because this is him setting the tone for all of the rest of his hires that he's made some hires before. Like, he brought in a new tennis coach and a new lacrosse coach, but this is big.
This is one of the money makers. It's pivotal, I think might be the word you're looking for.
Yes.
Pivotal decision.
It's huge because this is one of your 3 biggest revenue sports. Mm-hmm. Like, you're basically set in the football and gymnastics coaching because until either Whit retires or something
dies
or something extremely bad happens with Utah gymnastics, you're not removing Farden and Whittingham. So you're right. Set. So this is one of his, like, we don't even know if he'll be around by the time Whittingham retires or Farden leaves or something. Mm-hmm. This might be Harlan's only chance to have a big hire. Yeah. So he needs to make the most of it because this is something that's going to, like, impact Utah for the future, like a long term.
Yeah, for sure. And to go off what you're talking about, not that Krystowiak was a bad coach by any means, but it was time. You know, he in 10 years with the program, he was 183 wins to 139 losses, roughly 57% winning percentage overall. But he was only 91-90, just barely above 50% in the Pac-12. And so then just kind of looking at his first 5 years, which were probably the best, 2 NCAA appearances, an appearance in the Sweet 16, notable NBA draftees such as Kyle Kuzma and Jakob Poeltl. Then you compare that to the last 5 years, and just not so great. No NCAA appearances, one victory in the Pac-12 tournament, which was this year, and 2 seasons under 500 in the Pac-12 these last 2 seasons. So it's just everything has its season, and luckily the season is now over. He wasn't a bad coach. He did do good things. Sweet 16 appearance is really impressive, especially in today's game. And I saw a tweet today that the last time a team from the state of Utah won an NCAA tournament
was in 2015.
Yeah, it was the University of Utah. BYU and Utah State have both been to NCAA tournaments a few times since then, and they're not finding victories. So
no, both of them lost. Both of them lost in the first round this year.
Exactly, and lost pretty big. And BYU lost to UCLA. So showing that the Pac-12 can still be one of the better conferences as far as basketball goes. I think it's been getting a lot of hate lately, saying that it's big programs in UCLA, which historically has been one of the best programs in the country, has kind of lost its way. That while Oregon was a powerhouse there for a minute, they've lost their way, but they're starting to get back in.
You have to factor in Arizona too, with all of the stuff that's Arizona's going through right now too. Like they gave themselves that postseason ban. Like,
yeah, Arizona. So this just couldn't have come at a better time, because the Pac-12 is kind of regaining its strength, building itself back up as far as competing on the basketball stage. And it's nice that Utah is now going to kickstart itself, restart itself, get that engine going again at this time. And like you said, this is a pivotal moment in Harlan's athletic career, being the athletic director. He needs to find the right guy, and I trust him to find the right guy. So it's a great thing to have happened this last week. It's time. The best to Larry. I think he did exactly what we could have expected him to do. And a lot of times you see this towards the end of a head coach's time with a program. The same thing happened with Coach Rose with BYU. They missed the tournament a couple times, had some losing seasons. That's when it's time, and it's time to move on. And luckily it came now, and I'm excited for the future because, like you had talked about, Utah's done a great job of recruiting. They have great recruits in Ian Martinez and Payla Larson, and obviously Timmy Allen has been fantastic for the program. And we've sent quite a few number of guys to the NBA. But lately, that leadership and finding that chemistry and finding that right lineup and what's going to work to produce victories, it just hasn't been there, and that's okay. That happens, but it's time for the basketball program at the U to rediscover itself and to get on par with where the football team is, because for Utah, their football program is excelling toward the top of a Power 5 conference, but the basketball team has been drowning. 2 Pac-12 South titles and appearances in the Pac-12 Championship for the football team. Well, the basketball team has finished 8th over the last 2 years. 8th out of the 12 teams.
Yeah, it's
not great.
And I think
finishing in that lower half. Go ahead.
I think another thing that's kind of should have been writing on the wall for Larry is when every single year you have a mass exodus of players out of the program. Like, yes, we've lost 2 to the portal up to this point of the season, but like last offseason, when Booth Gotch entered the portal after withdrawing his name from the NBA draft, that was a big blow. Like, when you lose one of your leading scorers on the team, and he just went and transferred to Minnesota, who also now is looking for a new head coach.
Right.
That's like, I'm not like, we don't know what Booth's motives were. Like he's from Minnesota. He could have transferred to be closer to his family and stuff like that. But at the same time, that was not an outlier. Like there was every single year we lost players to the portal. And they were big players too. Like,
I think that this release has everything to do with timing, like we were talking about. It's a young team. you do have a couple of other upperclassmen that can come back next year, and Alfonso Plummer and Timmy Allen that are special talent. Timmy's easily the best player on the team, but you've got a lot of young players that are up and coming and are great athletes and showed a lot of promise in Pela Larson, Jantanen, Martinez, those younger guys, Brandon Carlson. And I think the release is timely because you didn't want to lose one of those guys to the portal, instead of looking to those guys and saying, okay, the last 2 seasons have been garbage and the same guy that was in charge is coming back. No, they're saying, all right, you know what? We're going to restart. We're going to get a new head coach. We're going to bring in a new leader for you guys. And we're going to try to give you guys the best opportunity to win and to be successful while you're here. So I think that's incredibly key. And like I touched on earlier, I trust Mark. I think he's going to find a great head coach, whether it's some of the names that you had mentioned or somebody else. He'll find the right person, and Utah fans should be excited.
I also think going back, the last thing I want to say about timing before we move on to our final topic is Utah was one of the first teams to fire their head coach of this year. Mm-hmm. So the market is very open. And it hasn't hit its peak yet, if that's what I'm trying to say. Like, you're not being overpicking. Like, if Utah was to wait until July to fire Harlan, like, that puts you in a bad position because whoever this new coach is needs to get in and re-recruit the kids that are in the program and get them to stay and start making things better. And, like, am I expecting us to make a Final Four next year with a new head coach? No. Am I expecting us to be vastly improved? To be determined. But it's just it's going to be interesting to see who it is and when it happens, when it comes down. I think the sooner the better because then you can get everything assimilated and start thinking about summer conditioning and get these guys.
Sets the tone,
get these guys ready because, they want to win trophies. They want to win championships. And the sooner you get in there, the better.
Yep. You set the tone from the beginning and you've got a long off season to figure it out. So here's hoping Utah basketball is much better next year. But let's move on to our final topic for the day. Probably my favorite topic, Utah football. How are we looking after 1 week of spring ball, Sammy?
Well, we don't know how we're looking because we don't have access. We can't go to practices. But, a lot has happened with this Utah program. So the last time we were on, there was rumors and speculation that Guy Holiday had been let go of on the team, as the wide receivers coach. And then the next day it was confirmed that he had in fact been let go of. And then it took a week for Kyle to bring on Chad Bumpus, our new wide receivers coach. That is some quick. If that is not quick turnaround, I don't know what is. Can we get Harlan on that for the basketball coach? By Wednesday of this week, we should know who our head coach is because it happened Wednesday of last week. Let's do that. But I'm excited to see what Bumpus can do with this team. He was on staff in 2018. He was a GA. Covey, Dixon, Enos, T-Boney, and Slavens were all on the roster when he was GA. So that's huge, He was a coach. He was a wide receivers coach at Austin Peay in 2019. And their team finished with an 11-4 record and averaged 34.5 points per game. And his wide receivers led the team to be the 20th ranked team in the country in passing yards with over 3,000.
Wow.
And then D'Angelo Wilson led the FCS in receiving yards with 1,564 or 1,564 and earned second team All Ohio Valley Conference. If that's what he can do with FCS talent, what can he do with Pac-12 talent? The other thing is Bumpus knows the game. He was a wide receiver at Mississippi State, He has a school record in touchdowns with 24. He ranks second in career receiving yards with 2,270 and third in receptions with 159. He was named to the freshman All Southeastern Conference team in 2009, and he was second team All SEC by the AP by the time he was a senior. He brings fresh blood program. He brings youth. He has NFL experience, and he is the perfect guy for a position group that desperately needs help and desperately needs to reach the level that the rest of the position groups are at. Because if I'm being blunt and honest in this situation, the wide receiving room at Utah is by far the group that has struggled the most since we joined the Pac-12. Like, yes, we've had some good wide receivers come into the program, but how many of them have we put in the NFL?
Very few.
So if we can get him in there and he can start assimilating these guys and getting them up to that NFL level, then we can talk about Utah finally getting over that Pac-12 South hump and finally getting over that championship game hump. And by bringing the wide receivers up to the level of all the other position groups, I think it's very possible. It's very, very possible.
Yeah, I think a big part of the reason that Holiday was let go is this is an extremely talented group of wide receivers, potentially the most talented group we've had since joining the Pac-12. And while there were issues at quarterback, they severely underperformed last season. And then obviously we have multiple transfers out of the program from two of the best wide receivers. And so just all that combined, we needed to bring in somebody that had that X factor about them that could take them to a whole new level almost right away, because the clock is ticking. I know that Covey's been here for a long time, but he's almost done here, right? And so it's just, we got to make the most of what we've got, especially with the quarterbacks that we brought in and such. Utah is starting, I think, to reach a very high level as far as a program. And if you can start to show people what you can do with wide receivers, the talent of wide receivers that they have now, your recruiting is only going to get better, and you're going to get better wide receivers coming into the program and better commits. And it's a domino effect. So excited to have him here, but just kind of transitioning into the next topic of football. I love the spring footballs here. It's great to be back talking about Utah football. And this season is really setting up to be special. Everything you talked about with Coach Bumpus sums up just how great he is. It's fantastic to have him and for him to be a part of the program again. But why I'm excited is we're overflowing now with quarterback talent. I do think that this is my early prediction. And
guys, everyone take note, because last time Cole made a quarterback prediction, he said Jake Bentley was going to be the dude, and
he ended up being the dude. Doesn't matter how he got there.
He was not. Oh my God. I severely have questioned that take.
Let's not talk specifics.
Captain of the Jake Bentley train over here. Choo.
Oh, I burned that train.
Choo.
All right. I think that the competition this season is going to come down between Brewer and Rising, with Brewer winning the competition. I don't think he's Bentley 2.0. And then also with JJ and Castelli, I think they'll be fantastic developments for the future, but they're really young, both of them being freshmen. I don't see them really adding a lot to the quarterback competition right now. I think you develop them, you let them learn, and maybe in a season or two, those are the guys that are going at it head to head. Rising, he was supposed to be the starter last year. Obviously, injury took him out of that, but I think it's going to be him and Brewer that we're going to see battling for that starting position. We'll see how it does turn out, and how Rising is post-injury. It was a bad injury. It's one of the worst injuries you can get as a quarterback.
Yep.
So we'll see how that turns out. We all know I love a good running back.
You do.
And I am just hyped about Pledger and Curry. I wouldn't be surprised if we see another running back committee, and this is a deadly committee if it is these two. They're vastly different styles.
Don't forget Mackay.
We'll see how he turns out.
Not slander Mackay on this channel. Do not slander
I like
him.
Mackay, but I think Pledger and Curry are above him as far as talent goes.
This is a Mackay Bernard slander free zone, my dude.
Okay. So Pledger and Curry and Mackay, but Pledger and Curry for me. I'm excited. They're vastly different in talent and what they can do. We'll see how that goes moving forward. And then my last little bit here, the defense was fantastic last year. It's only going to be better. The season will be special, and I can't wait to be a part of it. Here for my last semester at the University of Utah. So it's shaping up to be good.
You know, I'm excited. I think this Utah football team is going to be great. And just the one thing I want to add about the quarterback point you made is, like, people are going to be worried that if Brewer gets the job over Rising, if Rising leaves, Brewer only has 1 year.
Mm-hmm.
He has 1 year. So to see him leave, like, just come out and just go for one last shot and then just be like, bye, deuces, that shouldn't worry Utah fans, because Rising's still like a sophomore. And he'll be a sophomore this year again.
Yeah, and the two other guys we talked about,
are freshmen,
and Jaquinta Jackson, they're freshmen. And so I think it's a best case scenario. You've got a fantastic veteran coming from Baylor, one of the best Baylor quarterbacks in the history of that program. Took him to a Sugar Bowl. You know, it's surprising.
He could have went to the NFL and tried threw his name in the draft and went for it. But I think
he was ranked number 2, the number 2 transfer by Fox Sports for this transfer portal, and we got him. So I'm excited. I hear good things about him. It's going to be good. It's going to be big.
I'm excited. Just like Utah football.
Just like indoor plumbing. Okay.
maybe Utah football will finally break the long curse of men's teams not winning tournament or Pac-12 championships.
I really hope so.
Because, Utah baseball, only men's team to win a Pac-12 championship.
We all know where that program is right now. But
hey, they're playing Stanford right now. Give them a break.
We got to finish up here, Sammy. That's all the time we've got today. We want to thank everyone for following us on Ute Dash. We encourage you guys to check out dashsports.tv and check us out on Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, and TikTok at dashsportstv. Thanks again, everyone. And Sammy, you know how to send us out.
Can I get a Sko Utes?
Have a good one.